Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry. We were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey, how you doing? This is Mick Tully from World of Martial Arts Television. Mahipal Lunia. Mahi, first of all, great to catch up with you again, my friend. And you've piqued my interest. You sent me a message on Facebook talking about a mad experiment. After the last symposium, you said that you had a madder experiment. So for the guys watching, it blew my mind, by the way, guys. So buckle in and listen to this description.
It's a pleasure being here with you guys. So mad experiment. So what is it? I'm calling it shock and awe, right? So what we are looking at is all the various kinds of speed and the purpose of speed, which is superior timing so that you finish a fight, right? So it's one of the most, two of the most important attributes, but you can't make the distinction between speed, distance, and time. You have to see and understand them together. And that's the crux of it. Now, when you talk to most people, when you say speed, what they're really talking about is initiation speed. How quickly can I finger jab you? Or how quickly does my jab land? But that is so short-sighted, right? You have over a dozen different kinds of speed that exist. And if you think about it, you're only as fast as the weakest link in that speed chain. Right? So you have everything from, hey, what's my proprioception speed where I'm beginning to figure out where I'm in time and space? What is my perception and mental speed where I'm beginning to able to recognize the pattern of the heuristics of attack and what my counters might be? My initiation speed, my alteration speed, which is the ability to change direction, my combination speed, right? My speed of recovery, my mental speed, my emotional speed. Right? Then how do you also move beyond speed, which is, that famous line in Enter the Dragon, where that old monk asks Bruce, so you hit him? He said, no, it hit by itself. So there's no thought, there's no I, right? It happens by itself. You have that. Then you have the speed of deception, how you do setups and how deception comes into play, and how do you quickly change things. What Boyd in the 50s, when he came up with the OODA loop, would have called creating novelty in a system so that you're unpredictable, right? You have that deception speed, but it doesn't end there. Look, all of us are sooner or later going to become old farts, hopefully, and not die at 32, right? So as we are growing and becoming old farts, that physical speed diminishes. We end up with bad knees, bad hips, bad elbows. Our eyesight goes to dogs, so to speak, right? And, we're not as pretty as we think we are. That affects our speed too, yeah? And what happens then? So there's this whole idea of mature speed, where I'm playing the game, where I'm just outside your range and able to get you at will slowly, but you can't get me. This is the true meaning of, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, but that takes years and years of refinement. And then what do you do when you have limitations, such as one of our ambassadors, he's paralyzed from his waist down, but you won't be able to touch him. So you have no footwork, you're not able to move. And how do you still maintain that speed? So that, and then we have some guys who train professional sports teams and are working with them to help them build that sense of proprioception where they are in time and space, and how to build hand-eye coordination, which is a key skill set. And then finally, Bruce Lee scholar who's basically been working with us to figure out all the speed timing drills that Bruce Lee did from the Wing Chun days all the way to later stage JKD, right? And then of course, trapping and throwing speed. So now imagine all these different components of speed, getting some of the best of the best in the world for that piece, putting them in a room together and saying, showcase what you do, teach what you do, let's go forward. So that's the damn insane experiment.
But did you know what? As you're saying this, you've just been firing off so many synapses in my head, because the first thing I thought about was, bear in mind, I'm a comic book geek, right? And the latest movie, spoiler alert, apart from Michael Keaton, not very good. The Flash movie, but hey, come on, Keaton will save anything, right? But that was always been one of my favorite superheroes. But what you were just saying something there that got me. You were on about the initial speed, but the initial speed will be the speed of thought, because in every sci-fi movie ever, it was speed of sound first, speed of light. Now it's speed of thought. And now that's the thing that's got me, because but the speed of thought and the awareness, I don't think if it diminish. I think it actually becomes better as you get older, right? So I'd like your thoughts on that.
If you train it, right? If you train it, and that's what I call maturing speed. So I would say that there's something faster than speed of thought, because if you think about thought is based in time. And if you study Krishnamurti's works or any of the old Indian mystics and Chinese mystics, thought is time is distance. So that itself has defined the limits of movement. But when we're talking about transcending thought and where it hits by itself, and there's no thought, there is no idea of what might happen, that's a whole different realm, right? So I hear you, I agree with you. I think there are way higher levels of speed. And then, I'd done work in the now so-called former Soviet, Eastern Soviet bloc, and some of the things that they doing there is mind-bending. I mean, I can't even bring some of that stuff forth without being called a nut job, right? And but yes, there are. Let's just say this, there are limits to physical speed, which diminish over time. You have also emotional speed, which is your emotional content, right? And if you don't get that under control, it actually slows you down. So it can either act as a brake or an accelerator, depending on how you use it correctly. What the mental speed gives you is it gives you a target. It starts converting speed into velocity, right? Which is that a target's in mind and I'm going after it, right? It also helps you figure out how to do setups and everything else. And then for the lack of a better term, there is this whole arena of psychic and spiritual speed, right? And when I use that word, I mean, it's beyond man, it's beyond your conception of I, where it just happens by itself.
But you see, this, bro, this is the thing, right? When you sent me over the clip and you said for your eyes only, I checked it out and I watched it, and then I watched it again. And like, Mahi, you know me well enough to know now, right, that I'm the least woo-woo person on the planet. So when people start talking about metaphysics, I'm like, whoa, I'm a big fan of physics, but metaphysics, I need to see it to believe it, right? But what the case that you're making for me, by the way, it's just as you're explains this to me, I'm getting it in my head now, where it's like, it's the old trope of the old master, who can visualize what's going to happen. He knows and you're like, is that the thing that we're scratching here? Is that the level?
I think that's part of it, right? That's part of it. So I think all of us at some times have experienced this. Let's say you're driving really fast on a highway, right?
Yeah.
And you're about to crash or an accident's going to happen. Suddenly everything goes into slow motion. Your perception of time has changed. So it's a phenomena in hypnosis that we call time distortion. So speed is really playing with your sense of time and the other person's sense of time, and time is relative, right? So the reason it is metaphysical is because most of us don't understand time and how it can change. It's kind of like, let's say you're standing in front of an ATM or a bank teller, and there are 5 people ahead of you. The second clock moves like, right?
Exactly.
And then you're on a hot date and time just flies and you're like, oh my God, what happened? It's 5 hours past, right? So, but it's the same amount of time, but your entire experience of it and how involved you were or not involved you were changes your perception, right? And that usually is not in conscious control. Learning how to bring that in, by the way, this is not something we'll be covering in the lab. This is a few years of study, but getting that under control is a critical piece. Does that make sense, buddy?
110%. Yeah. It's again, it's very matrixy Black Mirror to me, but it's that whole thing where it's your perception of time. You said something earlier where we were on about if we're lucky enough to become older. I use this all the time where people complain about their knees, and I'm like, a lot of people don't get the luxury of growing old, mate. You know what I mean? Don't worry about that. But the perception of time is as you get older, it seems to go quicker. Yes. And there's this concept that when you're 20, 5 years is a long time, because that's a quarter of your life. And it's that it's looking back on that body of work to be able to do it. So as you're saying about speed, it's making me go, yeah, I wouldn't mind slowing things down a little bit if possible, maybe squeeze a few more decades out. I'm halfway to 110 now, Mai. So, at 55, I want to slow it down a little bit. Now, if you don't mind me asking, right? So you said a few key words there that literally are, as they would say now on Twitter, a bit of a hot topic. So you mentioned late stage Jeet Kune Do, then talked about intercepting blows, then you talked about breaking timing, understanding rhythm. It sounds like this is some heresy, especially on the anniversary of Bruce's death, that to be looking at this with not a critical eye, but an eye that wants to understand what he was all about. Because what you're saying to me about understanding speed and timing, was there anybody ever on celluloid who was as good when it came to time as Bruce Lee? Because his techniques weren't that flashy, were they? But the intercepting fist, the whole lot. So my question's 2 parts. First one is, have you shared this on the demonic thing that is social media and taken all the slings and arrows? That's the first one. And secondly, what was it like getting any sort of feedback?
But let me just back up before I get to your 2 questions. All right. Is it heresy? No, it should be the greatest compliment to him, right? Because, where he talks about, everyone likes to say, hey, absorb what is useful, blah, 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 the line from Mao, but they forget the sentence that precedes it, which is from your own experience.
Exactly.
That's number 1. Number 2, anytime you give something a name, an idea, it becomes a hypothesis. And if you say you're going after a scientific method, shouldn't you test the hypothesis and be able to replicate it? Or do you belong to the church and religion of put your favorite character, Flash, Gordon, Mandrake, Lee, right? So I think it's not heresy as much as the highest compliment to all those who came before us and said, hey, this is what I hold to be true, right? But don't take my word for it. From your own experience, go test it out. Now, to answer your two questions, yes, I posted it on social media. Gotten a lot of interesting private messages, let's just say that. Everything from you're taking sides, this camp, that camp. And I'm like, you know what, guys, the thing I love about America? They say, what? I said, anyone can do any shit you want. So why don't you go do it instead of telling me what I should be doing, right? Of course, they go silent then.
But May, can I just stop you right there? I just need to ask you, first of all, where have you parked the DeLorean that hit 88? Because you have come back from the future, because that sort of level-headed chat right there doesn't exist anymore. You need to go back before the internet was invented. Well, I haven't said that. We used to argue. I don't know if you remember, we used to argue in the back of Kung Fu magazines back in the day. So we just have more of it now. That's the only thing. But it's very level-headed that you said that, because, again, this understanding of speed is, again, as you were saying it, Bruce Lee's the man, right? Anybody who got into martial arts who said that they didn't have a small little bit of influence from Bruce, I don't believe them, especially our generation, right? But the thing that always drew everyone to him, yeah, all right, he was in pretty good shape for a 5'7" Chinese guy, but his speed was phenomenal. And everyone, remember, for a long time, everyone said he was just born like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know much about statistics, but I think
that is a discredit to the hard work he put in.
I think so too. So that's going to lead me on to now, because we now know how much physical training he actually did and how far ahead of the game he was, because everyone thinks about the philosophy, but it's understandings of calisthenics, plyometrics, or resistance training. Like, he knew, he was one of the first guys to turn around and say, why are you punching fresh air? If you're not hitting impact, you're not getting feedback. It's not real. Exactly. So what I'm wondering is, now, from this mad experiment, physically, what sort of training is going to be on offer?
Okay, so I want to say this first, that this is part one of a three-part plan that I have, right? So if you look at any system around the world, I'm answering your question. I have to just take a little sideways road, but indulge me.
Always.
If you look at any system in the world, it's specialized in one or two ranges. Yeah. Right? And so when they develop speed, it was in the context of that particular range. Right? Yeah. Now we live in a world where we have all these ranges. And if you're blind to the range where he's 12 feet from you and your basic proprioception has failed, and your ability to calculate and diffuse the situation has failed, but I'm waiting to, do a Paksao and a BG and, jab him in the eye. I mean, to me, that's wasted movement. That's a wasted opportunity. So what we are doing is we are looking at the physical attributes of all the ranges from where you're way out of range and you're able to perceive, and if you're smart enough, avoid the damn thing. Because you know what? Even when you win, you don't win because you end up paying a heavy price for it, right? So that's one piece. Then how you get into, say, whip and sword fighting range. People are only. I mean, I don't care if you move even as fast as Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee didn't break the sound barrier. The whip does. Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee wouldn't be able to move half as fast as a good Kali man moving with his sticks. So there's a different, so this is nothing against Bruce. He specialized, he was really good. He influenced many of us, including me, deeply, right? But there are other kinds and other levels of speed that also have to be looked at. And these come from different ranges, from different cultures, right? Now, when you start getting into kicking and punching range, now you get into when you start getting into kicking and punching range, you also have to develop what I call sensitivity speed. And when I say sensitivity, people just assume Wing Chun. No, there are traditions far older than Wing Chun, and that's what one of our ambassadors is going to show as to how the Chinese developed what is called listening energy, right? And how do I actually listen with my whole body and my psyche, right? So you get into the listening, that sensitivity and listening range where I don't have to be in my Chi Sao range to begin, right? And now from there, I'm getting into my trapping and grappling. Now we have a 9th degree Kung Fu Sansu, a world Shuai Jiao champion, and BJJ 5th Dan going to show how to throw quickly. And he also does sumo, okay? So he's going to show, okay, from the trapping, how do you get into throwing and on the ground, right? So you have to look at all those ranges, but there's also one other piece. There's old Japanese Koryu traditions that a lot of people say, fufu, that doesn't work. But what they're doing is they're comparing a sport with a battlefield tradition of that day. But what they did really well is learn the idea of Zen, which is how do I get my mental and emotional content in place so that, this Mushin, no mind, nothing comes in the way. Right? How do I build that? So, we're looking at all these physical aspects and saying at all these ranges, let's isolate the different pieces and see what are the key skills that you can start to develop. That's part one. Now, part two we'll start going into some of the new sports science. This is probably in the next year and a half, and how the latest discoveries in sports science and with some of the special forces outside of traditional one-on-one fighting, what are their findings? Like, how do they tweak their vestibular system to have superior balance? How have they figured out to go from your foveal vision to peripheral vision, right? So those are things that, that shift of going from peripheral, from foveal to peripheral slows time down, but most people don't know how to do it, right? So that's part two, and part three is a little more weirder. I don't want to talk about it yet, but that's the way we're building up. So what we hope that participants will walk away from is get a more fuller understanding of the speed. Now, here's an example, right? Most people have no idea what positional speed means. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
How do I get myself into such a position where my opponent is always slower than me, where I do half the work that he does, and I still land home?
Yeah. The thing, just as you're saying this, because as you're saying this, my brain's going crazy. Because first of all, I try and teach kids about peripheral vision, and I use the Kali as an example. And then I always explain to them that in every Kung Fu movie you'll ever see, there'll either be a guy blindfolded or, that nonchalant thing. Remember, back in the day, you see a guy demoing, and I'd be like, that guy really believes his own press. He's not even looking at the guy. And that was my ignorance, because I didn't realize he was working his peripheral vision. He was actually, that's what he was doing, right? So that's the first thing. This is why these are hitting home for me. Then in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I have it all the time now, where guys are like, yeah, but how are you able to beat me? And I went, because I've already dug your grave. Yeah, you're in the worst position ever. I'm in the best position. Yeah, but how? And I went, because I'm a bit of a sociopath. And I was thinking about getting you in the car, like, before we even got here. And like, this is why it's all hitting me now, because I'm thinking, it's exactly where you're talking about time. I'm like, yeah, but that's how I treat my training. I'm driving away to train, and I'm thinking, who's going to be there tonight? And I'm like, right, okay. Yeah, I won't mention names, so they're all dear friends of mine, but they've all got certain games. And I'm like, right, well, if he's there, this is what I'm going to do today. And then obviously I do a lot of this, oh, you're that guy bit. So if they set up, they look for the armbar, I went, oh, you're that guy. They said a man would come and he would be able to armbar me once. I didn't think it'd be you. And then obviously they normally bail on the armbar and then they do something else. So it's kidology, really. But that understanding of timing, because I'm not even in the gym at that point. And that's, you see, this has really got me, well, it's got me thinking, because as I said in the build-up, that initially I thought this was going to be like some sort of exploration on the Speed Force in the Flash movies, But then when you think about physics, you're like, Well, all it is just a little bit quicker, So can you tell me the genesis of this project? When did you first think, right, okay, I'm just going to focus on what, and like, if you don't mind me saying it, Mahi, right? I do like it because it shows exactly the way you think. Because I don't want to say normal people. Normally people would look at a technique and they go, right, okay, we're going to work from the jab or we're going to work from the cross. And what you've done is worked away from all of that and just, no, we're just going to, you've picked up speed. It could have been power. It could have been balance. It could have been any of the building blocks that you actually, because everyone talks about you need superior technique and you're like, yeah, but, we call it chi, we call it ki, we call it whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really physics first, right? So where was the genesis of this idea for you?
Yeah, I'll answer that. It's like, you have a superior AR-15 and you miss, and I have a kitchen knife and I connect. What would you rather have? So genesis of this idea, well, a big influence on my life has been Maestro James Keating. And he's influenced not just my martial arts, but how to think about it, and how to unpack it. So it was in one of the trainings with him where we were talking about different kinds of speed and, how it happens. And that was the genesis of it around 2017, 2018. And since then, I've been trying to break it apart and make sense of it and say, okay, how do we do this? And, no one person is going to be able to do it all. They may be able to have timing through that particular path, but there are many paths that lead to the top of the mountain. So being able to examine all of them, and then when we look at our own attribute development or fight development, we can choose to say, okay, these are the pieces I want to tweak and work on, number one, or B, hey, let me be aware of this, because if I've never played this game at this range or know how the speed can manipulate there, right? I won't know what hit me if I get there, right? So that was the genesis about 2017, 2018. And took me a good 4 or 5 years to kind of at least conceptually have these 3 different labs set up, part 1, part 2, part 3. The first one looking at the physical pieces mainly and looking at the different ranges and start getting people to think about speed a little more holistically, right? Rather a little more comprehensively rather than, hey, let me just, bam, I got him,
Yeah, but it's funny because from your last, it's almost like the complete opposite to the symposium that you just had, which was a showcase of all different arts, all different people. And then now it's like, there's all different people, but there's only one thing we're working towards now. So it's almost like, if you imagine I'll use something as basic as an angle 1 in Kali, and then go, right, okay, I'm going to get 4 different arts to show me their interpretation of an inward caveman strike. Go. And then it's like, are you looking for similarities in the different approaches to it, or are you looking for like the differences in their approaches?
Yes.
You should have been a politician, Mahi, I told you.
No, see, if you're always just looking for similarities, you generalize too much and you lose the beauty of the differences. And if you're always looking for the differences, you become a damn expert in little things and lose the big picture, right? So I like to think about it as, this is why I say, it's the age for a martial comprehensivist, right? Where you are able to think comprehensively. I think it was Hemingway. I could be wrong, but I think it was Hemingway. He says you want to be T-shaped, you have real depth in one particular area, and then you have breadth and you're able to go across multiple realms with ease. And that's what develops fluency. And, Robert Heinlein said it beautifully, where he's like, specialization is for insects. Yeah.
Wow. Heinlein said that. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when you said it, I know, I think it was Hemingway who said it, but a really dear friend of mine, John Will, one of the first non-Brazilian black belts, he always says this. He said, people want to specialize, but they also want to know everything. He says, right now, people just want to have this all-encompassing knowledge. He uses jiu-jitsu because that's his art. And he said, everyone wants to understand everything broadly, but they only want to dig about 3 inches down. He said, no, you want to understand broadly, but you want to really understand deeply. And like he used the analogy of drilling for oil. He said, you've just got to keep going. And then if that doesn't work, then you go somewhere else. And I do like what you said there. We are in that age right now where people would rather look like they knew loads.
Yeah, and I think the mistake is between means and ends. Even if I don't hit gold, it's who I become in the process of pursuing that gold that forever transforms me, right? And then the fact that, hey, I get this right now, like, wait, you were doing historical European arts and you're doing what now? I'm like, the essence of freedom is to be outside of other people's definition of you.
Wow. Now that's profound. Yeah. But having said that, isn't that what we aspire to be as martial artists? That whole thing where you walk in the room and people go, I didn't realize you did that. And you're like, yeah. I'd rather you thought I was Bruce Wayne than Batman. You know what I mean? It's that whole secret identity thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, I think it's a maturity process from my perspective. Like when you first start getting something, you want to show it, especially in this social media heavy world. There's this amplification of what you do, right? But sooner or later you realize that you don't want to show your gold, because when you show your gold too much, they know where to get you.
Yeah.
Right. So I think as you start, maybe we're becoming old farts, Mick. We don't want to show our gold, and we just want to be like, I just want to have fun, Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that scene from Zorro, Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins. And, with such little movement and elegance, the swords off, You know what? That's the kind of old man I want to be,
That sort of leads us into where I'd like to go with this. You've mentioned a few times about becoming an old fart, the passage of time, right? Now, this study that you've been undertaking in time, is this not just for martial arts, but for this crazy thing that we called life as you're going through it? Have you learned about the human condition with that?
It has, because when we do experiments like this as well, and life in general, you get to see the true sides of people. You very quickly make the distinction between those who will be on your team and those who won't. Those who will show up with a machete and cover your back, and those who will be like, hey man, I had a phone call, I'm sorry, I couldn't pay attention. You quickly figure out who your circles are. And secondly, I think like an old mentor of mine, one of the things he taught me was, he's like, we want to become ever so ordinary in the pursuit of extraordinary knowledge. The problem today is people want to be very extraordinary with very ordinary knowledge, right? So that's the pursuit. So that's why I seek the very best of the best, who will make me ever more humble, so that I realize all the things that I don't know. And in that process, spark my interest, my curiosities, and, do stuff that's fun for me. And hopefully that slows down the aging process.
Well, this is the thing, right? Just as you were saying that, my mind went straight back to a quote from Hemingway, where Hemingway said, the crazy thing about being a human being is it takes 2 years to learn how to talk And then it takes 60 years to learn how to listen. And I'm like, the man's got a real point there. And the ordinariness, that really has hit me, because for the longest time ever, and I'm not a narcissist, but I've always had a very high opinion of myself. But that's only because it's the truth. I'm being honest here. Up until 16, I was told I was worthless. So I created the person I am today. Yeah. So I was told I was going to be nothing. And then I'm like, right, okay, guess what? Not only am I going to do it, but I'm going to excel at it. And right up into, but even now, I'm still sort of the same sort of person. Why do you do jiu-jitsu? Why do you want to fight guys 30 years younger than you? Because I can, and I enjoy it. But the other part of it is, and now this, dear listener, you've heard it here first. I'm coming to the point in my life where I'm like almost getting to be at peace with being ordinary. And I know that sounds crazy because that's a full circle yin and yang thing. But I no longer need to be the most interesting person in the room. I no longer need to be the most humorous person, well-read person. I'm quite happy to just look now and go, right, okay, let's see if this guy's got anything interesting. Because I've spent probably 30 years not listening to people, because I'm like, no, I'm infinitely more interesting than you are. You know what I mean? If you're any good, you'll up your game. But it's like I didn't think this was where we were going to go with this combo, because
so good.
But no, but it is good, because it's like it's the understanding of the passage of time. When I was coming into this, I was thinking we're just going to talk about how fast you can make my jab, and now you're making me think all sorts of mad existential. Bear in mind, if I was 16, I wouldn't be able to have this, because these dark thoughts wouldn't be good for me. But this, I'm like, forget it. I'm not going to listen to that. But it's the whole, just as you were saying there earlier, slowing down the passage of time and trying to stay more childlike, with that, just the way that you look at stuff with that childlike wonder. And man, Maija, again, you've taken me to places I didn't think I was going to go when we started this podcast. So when does this mad experiment start? Where is it, and how do you get involved?
So all the info is on www.theimmersionlabs.com. It's November 3rd to November 5th. Now, when I say 3 days, I mean 3 days. Your ass is going to be on the mat 14 to 16 hours a day. Okay, so I'm not talking about come at 12 and leave at 3, right?
Yeah.
And that constitutes a day. No, you will come in at 6 a.m. and we'll probably go past 10 p.m. Okay. So think about it as 40 hours on mat, and you have 15 sessions, okay, from some of the best in the world. So it would be like, in my opinion, getting 15 to 20 seminars concentrated in one place, one time, where you're able to holistically look at it. It's going to be the Bay Area, California. The way you get involved is just as always, there's an application form. We need you to fill out the application form. We go through an NDA and we have an interview. People are like, oh, you're just trying to make it elitist. I'm like, no, we get some very strange people, right? And I learned the hard way when in one particular experiment, I had 2 rival gangs from 2 different countries show up because they didn't want the other guy there. Okay?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no, I don't want to deal with this. And, it just takes away from what we are trying to do. We are trying to be the Switzerland where everybody comes and everybody's able to do things, right? Because this is not about being political or affiliated to anyone or anything. And that's why even the name that I have has nothing to do with martial arts, right? So it's like, it's just about jumping in, immersing yourself. And that's what you're trying to do. So yeah, November 3rd to November 5th, get your application in sooner than later. And we tip, why the application? Just a couple of things, Hey, want to make sure we have a broad range of people, right? Because if we just create an echo chamber, that's useless. Like at the last event, I had 2 of my biggest critics show up as participants.
Wow.
You need to do it, because I think your critics can be your best mirrors, and then suddenly they became friends. So
it's funny how that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want a broad range. I want to make sure that I have a zero asshole policy. Once you're on the training mat, that's a zero asshole policy. This time I'm also going to have a dumpster outside that says park your ego here. So we'll return it with interest. So second and third, guys who are capable of coming with an empty cup. If you already know everything about everything, then why waste your time and money? And why should I listen to you? You figure it all out. Have fun. Here is a bunch of guys who want to live the questions rather than pontificate the answers. So that's the kind of people I'm looking for.
Well, you see, May, as always, it's always great chatting to you. But I like your outlook. The Switzerland thing. My children say that to me all the time. Because if I ever ask them for their opinion on anything, they always go, because I'm quite a contentious individual. And they go, Dad, I'm Switzerland. It used to be neutral. Then it's now I'm Switzerland. And then it's like, no, sorry, Swiss. They won't get involved in it. But I really like, as I said, May, always love chatting to you. But it's crazy because you're one of the only people that I interview that makes me really think. Because normally it's dead easy. And that's not to denigrate anybody I've ever interviewed before, because it's quite easy. You just have to do a bit of research, and then if it's going to be about karate, we've always got some common ground. But with you, whenever we talk, you always make me start thinking, pondering questions, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to sit and think about that, which is what it's all about, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that as the highest compliment, because I think it's people who make us question our reality, make us question how we think things, and reorganize how we think and show up in life. They're the ones who change things, right? Because as you were talking about the armbar, whatnot, I remember this one old sensei. He was 5'4", but man, he would crank those locks up. And no matter what I did, I knew he was going to do that particular armbar. I knew it. And he would tell me he would do it, and then he would do it. And I hated him for it, right? But he left me with a great advice that just took 20 years for it to make sense. Okay. I said, okay, I don't want to be here. I don't like this. How do I counter it? And he said something that back then I thought he was a smart ass, but he gave me the answer. I just didn't have the perspective to see it. He said, be where the lock is not.
Oh, that is profound. Yeah.
He said, be where the lock is not. It just took me 20 years to understand.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the thing is though, Mahi, some people wouldn't even get that. It could take a lot longer than 20 years to get it. But it isn't that, like, to round it all out, man, doesn't that just sum up the simplicity of it all? It's like, we're trying to make it this is the best description I've ever heard about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ever. And I'm going to give him the credit it's due. One of my main training partners now is a guy called Wayne Lakin, Olympic level judoka. He's amazing. I think he's a 4th or a 5th dan at judo. Put the white belt on at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's come. He really enjoys it, loves every minute of it. And he said, I've got this theory how Jiu-Jitsu was developed. And I'm thinking, they went over, Maija went over to Japan, over to Brazil, gave them part of the system. They had to figure out the rest. That's why it's this brand new martial art. And he went, no, they just looked at judo and went, how can we complicate this shit even more? And that was the thing. And I was like, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Because when you get judokas in, everyone's like, he's got a very limited game. And you're like, he's got a great Juji Katami that he can hit from 15 positions. Yeah, but he hasn't got 15 arm bars. He doesn't need 15 arm bars. He needs the one arm bar and the 15 ways to get there. And when he said that, I was like, you're right. And without sounding all cosmic, as you get older and, you look back on all the older guys that you see training and in the movies, and it was always the guy, all of his knowledge was always that profound, but it was always really, really basic. It was all, wax on, wax off. That was it. It was,
it's
it's ridiculous.
if I may share this, there are two older gentlemen coming to teach. Not too many people know them, and that's shame on them for not knowing them. Right? One is Olohe Jerry Walker, is one of the last grand masters of the Hawaiian art of Lua. I talked to him about speed and taking part in it. He's like, I got old man speed, man. I got timing. I don't need speed. That was his one sentence. I was like, you got to be there. And then Patrick Strong, first generation Bruce Lee student.
Yeah, Patrick
and
Strong.
And the man is insanely fast. You know, I mean, you don't know what fast is until you felt the man, you know? And
yeah,
he's in his 80s and he's faster than me. So part of me wants to say, oh shit. But the other part says, wow, I can get there. When I'm 80, I want to beat this old man. I want to be better than he was. So, you know, that perspective can.
No, but that's the thing is, I think that, there's a good way to round it up. You know, it's the one thing that when I got into martial arts, it was the inspirational and aspirational nature of it. You know, I was inspired by people. And then as the years have gone on, I have people now telling me the only reason I'm in here is because I see you still doing it and I'm able to do it. And, you know, it would be remiss of me. It's Bruce's anniversary of his death. And it is a classical mess. And you just mentioned Patrick Strong. And as I always say, you know, Mark Stewart, he's from a completely different lineage in Jeet Kune Do, but I love the guy. I think he's amazing.
I love him.
And I honestly, you know, on the 50th anniversary of the death of Bruce Lee, when you mentioned Patrick Strong there, I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great? Because all of those original guys, they never fell out with anybody. It's all of their acolytes and disciples that seem to argue with each other. And it's like, you know, because Guru Dan will never say a bad word about anybody. And even I stay in line because I don't want to upset Guru. But the thing is, it's only when guys act like complete clowns. But it's none of the older guys. And, you know, it is that, wouldn't it be great as you've created Switzerland? Wouldn't it be great if some of these guys actually just went to the Alps? You know what I mean? And just...
I really hope so, because I think, you know, for all the talk about using no way as the way, no limitation, no map, so many of them have boxed themselves into their own prisons and become their own guards. And they almost, this is my perspective, what the hell do I know? But to me, it feels like...
I totally agree.
It feels like, you want to be in my prison, you better pay me X amount of dollars before I give you the privilege of being in my prison.
Yeah, but you see, this is the thing. This is all lineages. I have friends of mine, and they're lovely guys, and I don't mind this being on this. Yeah, this is my part and shot on this thing. I've got friends of mine from all lineages, and I mean including mine, who have literally allowed themselves to, you know, go from that once fluid man. You know what I mean? You know, the gravestone that Bruce famously had made up, and I'm going, but you're a slave to it. And don't get me wrong. I get it thrown at me all the time. All you do is Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Thai boxing, and a bit of Kali. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what suits me. When I go to a restaurant, I only eat prime rib, chicken wings, and I'll have gherkins if they're frickles, you know, as long as they're deep fried. But that's how my martial arts is. And you look at this guy, but I'm prepared to try anything else. And I see it, especially in Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do should have been MMA. But we were too busy arguing with each other. That's why. Who would want to turn up and see a load of guys bitching about each other? It's ludicrous. And then you're not very good. And I'm like, I know I'm not very good. That's why I'm still training, mate. You don't need to tell me anything that I don't know.
Like I tell all the guys, I'm like, I agree with you. Like, you know, what I tell them is, hey, you really want to beat up an Indian guy with glasses? You think that's going to improve your street cred? But what happens when I kick your ass? You know,
ouch. That's the thing, bro. That's the thing. But Mahi, as I said, I really mean this from the bottom of my heart, man. Always great to see you.
Thank you, sir.
And for the guys who are watching, it's a real shame that we can't ever record when I'm talking to Mahi off camera, because now that would be a great podcast. But
lad, you had me in trouble, Mick.
We'd both be in trouble then. But Mahi, so good to see you, brother, as always. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, brother.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.